Oh,
nope.
hello.
Oh, there we go. I wasn't coming through. My bad. There's too many buttons I have to click here. Jeez. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another Grounded TV live stream. Saul's in here with me right away as well. We're going to get started here. So we're going to start with just the whole newsreel of this whole crazy topic, honestly, of Trump, of how serious Trudeau is taking this, behind closed doors. I think is something that is definitely worth talking about at this point, because to me, if Trudeau is taking it this seriously behind closed doors, how seriously is CSIS and our military taking these jokes, right? Like, that's what I kind of get from it. Maybe I'm jumping or leaping there, but hey, Rob, how's it going, buddy? And hey, 2 cents, hey, and Rhonda, how's it going, guys?
Up at the top.
Yeah, I was
giving us a hard time about the title.
Not acknowledge it.
Yeah, no, I think it's worth taking. I mean, if Trudeau's getting caught on a hot mic, taking it seriously, I mean, I've heard of some people say that they think he did it on purpose or strategically. It's like, I don't think so. I think he's just an idiot.
Oh, sorry, your camera's not coming through. Hey, how's it going, Melissa?
Oh, yeah, sorry, here,
Nova Scotia. I hear Nova Scotia is pretty beautiful. My wife keeps talking about it all the time because she watched some show that was filmed there, Virginia River or something, and she's like, look how nice it is there.
So she wanted to go.
Oh, it does look real nice, but I'm like, there's certain areas of Vancouver that look real nice too. And then you go to East Hastings, a little bit different.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Well, that's where you put all the bad people, and then the rest of the city's fine.
Yeah. Anyways. We'll get right into this. Sorry, just something going on in the background here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Serapio. Well, apparently Donald Trump is not kidding when he talks about annexing Canada, because that is the assessment shared by the Prime Minister today in Toronto, made before a gathering of business, trade, and union leaders, all of whom were brought together to talk about maintaining and building economic prosperity in the face of a U.S. president who continues to refer to this country as the 51st state.
Canadians are watching right now. They're watching to see that our leadership collectively is able to meet this moment, is able to step up, is able to be there to say, this is Canada, we got this, and this is how we're going to do it. Can we be thoughtful and deliberate about the kinds of partnerships that enhance and create true win-wins, but also give us a little more protection against political rhetoric in the United States?
So that was the comment that the Prime Minister meant to share with the public, a message of diversifying and protecting the Canadian economy. What was not meant to be shared, though, was Trudeau's frank assessment about how Donald Trump truly feels.
Just one second. I have something going on in my situation. I have to step away for a sec, so I'm just going to leave you with this.
I'll stay here.
Going on. One sec.
Taking over this country. CPAC's Andrew Thompson was covering the summit in Toronto. He joins us right now. So tell us a bit more about this candid comment that was made by the Prime Minister, Andrew, because again, it was not meant to be shared.
That's right, Michael. So the Prime Minister delivered those opening remarks that the media were allowed to cover. And then, as media were being escorted here on site back to the media filing room, some reporters passed by a speaker that actually had a live audio feed from inside that closed-door session. And what they heard was the Prime Minister say that the threat of annexation, that this threat from Donald Trump was real, and that it was actually tied to Canada's supply of critical minerals. Here's how the Toronto Star quoted the Prime Minister. They're very aware of our resources, of what we have, and they very much want to be able to benefit from those. But Mr. Trump has it in mind that one of the easiest ways of doing that is absorbing our country, and it is a real thing. And then soon after that, Michael, the audio feed was cut off.
Yeah, that was a direct quote,
but not before it was reported by our friend Tana McCharles at the Toronto Star. But the Prime Minister, interestingly, Andrew, did not scrum after the comment was shared widely, but his ministers did. What happened there?
It's all good.
Well, it's interesting, Michael. Ministers wanted to focus on some of the what they call the positive conversations they've been having in Washington recently. They wanted to focus on some of the big issues of this summit, like knocking down internal trade barriers. But 3 members of cabinet did have to face questions on this.
It's funny because I actually kind of think that some of the stuff that Trump has been kind of saying he wants to do, I don't even think it's like a terrible idea if you did it in a normal way. Like if you wanted to integrate Canada and the U.S. more and kind of make us like an unofficial 51st state, like we're like Capadonna to the Wu-Tang Clan, not an official member, but we're on all the albums. I think that would not be the worst thing in the world. but the way he's doing it, where he's like kind of talking about annexing us, and he's not ruling out what was it that he said, economic action or whatever. I don't know. It's
I think yeah.
There's so many smarter ways to do this, you know.
Maybe, but this is the way he negotiates, and arguably it's worked for him up to this point in his life, and he's 80 what now? So it's blame him for having the same time. It seems to work.
I just feel like it could have worked so much better for him if he had just done the normal thing, because like he could have had Pierre. I mean, who's to say that Trudeau would have even?
Who knows? Trudeau could have been saying that also to cover his own butt, to like justify his decision of the counter tariffs and everything he was doing, right? Because he was dealing with all these manufacturer leaders, right? Like those who were at that meeting. So it's like people who are affected mostly by these tariffs, like companies, like people with money who are affected by these tariffs. You know what I mean? So these people, they're going to listen to more than, because they donate to their party and stuff too, right? Like if he wants to raise money for his party, like, you know, he's got to keep these people happy. And I think that's why the Conservatives have so much funding, is because they were the first on a lot of this kind of stuff, right? They were the first to start saying, hey, we're going to be doing this. We're going to be making our economy better. We're going to be focusing on Canada first, you know, making sure we get things going better, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And critical minerals. Here's how they answered.
And they understand now better than ever that you cannot pick on Canada and make life more affordable for Americans. You cannot pick on Canada and making sure that you rebuild your industrial capacity, and you cannot pick on Canada and make North America more secure.
Canada is united on one thing, its pride in being Canadian, and we will always. You
know, I don't think Canada is united like at all. Like, are these guys like out to lunch or high or something? Like do they think this country's united right now?
Do you think that I feel like there's been a little bit of unity that's come out of this, where people are kind of united in the sense that they all want to push back on this. I think it like you don't think so at all?
Like, I don't know. I just think like, we're all united and pushing back on it. But like whenever they say Canada's united right now and stuff, I just like, are we? Like, I feel like everyone, like we're more divided than we've ever been. You know what I mean? And because of your government, and we're all pissed off. I think the only thing we're united on is how much we hate Trudeau. The only thing that we're united on is how much we're pissed off about this prorogation right now. Like, you know what I mean? That's what we're united on.
Yeah,
that's.
I think a lot of people don't even know really what that means.
Like even with a lot of people for state stuff, people are all over the map on this. Like if you took a referendum right now, I don't think everybody would be on the same page at all.
Isn't it like 80-20?
I don't know. Yeah, have you participated in any poll? That's what I mean. Like there hasn't actually been like any actual polls on this.
You think they're fake? They're fake polls?
No, I don't think there actually has been any polls on that. Like if people want to be the 51st state, I don't think there is, unless you can find them. Show them to me.
I think it'd be like 80-20 seems, if anything, like over saying. I don't think a lot of people do want to join.
He was on stage with a mic in his hand, so I think maybe hot mic is the wrong term. Maybe leaked audio. The person recording wasn't supposed to be there. You know what I mean? Like he was talking on a microphone. Yes. After he shuttled the reporters out of the room. It was someone who wasn't a reporter who recorded that.
That's what I'm saying, is I think that he just was being a lot less careful with his language because he didn't think he was being recorded, which is stupid because you're in a public place. There's cell phones everywhere. You know, people could be recording. I don't know why you would do that, but I don't know. I think it's just it's incompetence for the reason that comment came out the way it did.
Well, we're really fragile, right? People don't realize like how like new of a country we are, and I think one thing people are all upset about is like how the crown is still, like, you know, technically the crown still owns all your property, right? Like the king owns all your property still, right? Like technically in Canada, like you don't really own it, right? Like,
I mean, the king couldn't come and just take all the property back. We're not even technically.
Well, it would never happen. But apparently, it's in your deed. Apparently, if you have a house deed, you can
we're an independent country. We've got our own charter.
It says that your house belongs to the crown. It doesn't say it belongs to you.
This country for its people and for the ability to make our choices.
Yesterday, they stated CBC leaked it. I haven't seen that. So you want to put that in the resources or something? I'd love to see that.
For ourselves.
There will be no messing with the 49th parallel, period.
And Michael, we also heard from the head of the Canadian-American Business Council on this, Beth Burke. She is an American, and she says that everyday Americans are not really interested in this whole annexation idea. But she says when it comes to critical minerals that this is actually a point of leverage that Canada has.
Yeah, guys, because I'm not going to cherry pick what I want to hear and what I like to hear. Like, this is something that our prime minister, regardless of how you feel, but he's still our prime minister, he said this in a closed room.
Yeah, and I mean, all of the mainstream media is
public
statements
the same way. Even if this is a staged leak, it's just weird. It's like, why leak it? You know what I mean? Like why not just have a broadcast to the people and tell people? You know what I mean?
It just makes them look stupid. it doesn't make any sense to privately, like to accidentally leak this. It just makes you look dumb. There's no advantage to that. This is what I mean. It's nothing Trudeau does to even make sense to me. Like if this was on purpose, why? What does he gain from this? He just looks dumb.
Ottawa Bureau Chiefs. Robert Fife is the Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail. Mia Rapson, Deputy Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Canadian Press. And Joël Denis Bellevance, Ottawa Bureau Chief for La Presse. Hello to the three of you.
Hello, Michael. Thanks for having us.
Hey, listen, we need to talk about this hot mic moment. So here you get this candid comment from the Prime Minister, which he wasn't expecting to be shared so widely. But how does it change the conversations between our political leaders, Bob, and the conversations they're having with industry and community groups?
Well, look, it's gone more beyond the hot mic of him saying that he wants to annex Canada for our critical minerals, but he also talked after the hot mic moment was over by saying that the president brought up a 1908 treaty, Canada-U.S. treaty on setting out the borders, and he said, I can just revoke that treaty and annex Canada. And the Prime Minister said, wait a minute here. You can't do that. They're international treaties. You just can't do this. But that shows you the state of Donald Trump's mind. And the other issue with this is who's telling him this? Because Canadian officials went back to the Americans who they thought had helped organize this meeting, and they said, what is going on with this 1908 treaty and this critical mineral stuff? Well, we don't know. So they think it's Steve Bannon or Stephen Miller or somebody else from the far right that are feeding him this sort of stuff.
Fair.
But, even when
I don't know if you
raise
guys
these
know who
kind
those
of
people
things-
are either. Bannon, everybody knows, but Stephen Miller has been Trump's speechwriter, I think, for like a while now. And he's kind of pretty aligned with that guy.
You increase, and they become public, you increase the possibility that will
Denny.
annoy
And National.
Trump in the White House. And what next is he going to do against you? We really just want to kind of calm everything down and let him move on to some other shiny object.
Yeah, although it's hard to ignore this hot
That's
mic.
the thing, though, is like they lose people when they talk so reductively about it in that sense. Like, it's not that dumb. Like, he's not that dumb. Like, he's just obviously a little bit unhinged and eccentric, but I wouldn't say he's that dumb. He's just looking for a shiny object. You know what I mean?
Well,
I think that's just like a reductive way to put it.
I heard somebody else kind of call it that he keeps on failing the marshmallow test. Like, you ever heard of that with kids where they say you can have one marshmallow now, or if you wait a couple minutes, we'll give you 2 marshmallows or 3 marshmallows or something. And then the kids who are not thinking clearly, they'll always grab the first
another
marshmallow,
reductive
right?
way to put it. Like, it's just
Why?
Like, why is everyone comparing him to toddlers and children? It's like,
I just think that's how he's acting. I think that if he had been smarter about this,
that's ridiculous. He's acting like a child.
He could have had
he's acting like
shoe in.
He's acting very authoritative and kind of like an imperialist. That's more what he's acting.
I just think it's like not very intelligent. Like, if you really wanted these things, there's smarter ways to do this, right? That's what I'm disagreeing with. I think that the way his sense comes off very like impatient and impulsive and like not very calculated, like not a chess player, somebody who just like would get mad at a chess game and say this is stupid or something like it. I don't know. That's just kind of how it seems to me.
I don't know. That's like, I guess, the whole left side is looking at it, and that's why they're not really quite like, granted, I feel like the right always tries to justify like, oh, if you just understood Trump, everything would be okay. But it's like, that's not necessarily the situation. But at the same time, I don't think you're doing anyone any favors comparing him to children or acting like he's just dumb. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's not doing anyone any favors. Hey, Armando, welcome back, buddy.
What do you think that's long, like, you don't think that there's smarter ways he could have gone about this?
Sorry?
You don't think there's any smarter ways he could have gone about this, like gotten the same result for less negative coverage?
I don't think so. I think what he's doing is trying to rally public support. I think he wants Canada to surrender itself if he wanted. If that was his game, I think he wants it to be, he's trying to dance around these international treaties.
He's going about this the wrong way.
Because like, the thing is I feel like he's trying to just get people in Canada to want this. And I think that's what this whole campaign, and I think people in America like it too. People in America like him talking like this. They like, oh, America getting bigger. I like that idea. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I think there's pulling.
Anyways,
I'm just going to see, because I wonder if there's been polling on that and how Americans feel about it.
Here's the summit happening in Toronto. This idea that, I think people were in this part of the world were trying to comfort themselves by saying, oh, it's a joke. You can ignore it. You can ignore it. But when the Prime Minister says that Donald Trump takes the idea of annexing Canada very seriously, how does it change the conversation, Mia?
I mean, the conspiracy theory side of me might suggest that this wasn't really a hot mic moment. I mean, even if he didn't expect it to be heard specifically, he didn't go into a room with like more than 100 people thinking this wasn't at some point going to get out. Someone in that room was going to share this information with someone at some point. So he didn't say this thinking it was just going to be a quiet, private moment. I think he actually wanted this sentiment to get out.
Guys.
They were maybe caught a little bit flat early on when they tried to suggest it was just a joke. Maybe they did think it was just a joke and have themselves realized that it's a little bit more serious. But it has changed the conversation. And to me, the fact that they're actually acknowledging that, and of course, Trump saying he doesn't need anything from Canada, but he would like us to become the 51st state. Well, those two things don't make any sense, because if we don't have anything he needs, why would he want us to become a state? What does he want from us? The resources we have that the United States does not. Oil, obviously one of them, but critical minerals is a big thing. There are many of them the United States doesn't have any of, and Canada is one of its biggest suppliers of those. So to actually put this into
apparently 3/4
work,
of Americans, they'd be only in favor of it if Canadians choose to or if they want to. Level of support for Canada joining the U.S. is 90% oppose in Canada, 10% support. USA says they're 25% support, 50% of them oppose.
Yeah, these are polls,
26%
right?
say they're not sure.
Yeah, it's a rough.
Yeah, these were last like a couple of weeks ago.
I feel like it would be a
2-3
little
weeks
bit.
ago.
I don't know, just from my experience. Maybe I'm just basing this off emotional firsthand experiences, not broad objective data. However, I feel like that number might be a little bit higher than 10%. Just from my experience.
I feel like it's who we know. That's like,
I don't know,
more of us being in a.
I guess the majority's in
bubble.
Quebec and Ontario.
it's I think what people have been thinking and wondering, like, why is he even talking about this? We are finally having the real conversation about what this is, what he's talking about, and why this is more than
economy and labor force would be good too. I don't think anybody opposes
to
that.
listen to political leaders trying to calm the waters down here in Canada over this 51st state comment, but listening to academics who talk about, political languaging and this idea that it's a clear signal that he does not respect Canada as a sovereign country. Jean-Denis, how does it change the conversation between leaders and business groups and communities?
Well, among Canadians, I think it does change the conversation massively. And we've seen an emergence of nationalism in Canada that I've never seen before in my lifetime. I know what national looks like in covering Quebec politics. Now I see it coming up and being very much fueled by what Mr. Trump is saying and thinking about Canada. So whether this voluntary or not, that this Mike incident, I think it will serve to mobilize Canadians and stay alert about what Mr. Trump wants to do with Canada, and also lead us to think seriously about making sure that we keep our economic sovereignty. And that brings along a lot of reflection, thinking about how can we make sure that we maintain the border line that was, as Bob mentioned, signed in a treaty 100 years ago, is respected by Mr. Trump and his fellow people. But don't forget something. Mr. Trump is having a very hard stance on Canada. And he's got followers in the United States who will maybe pick up his message again. So it's a dangerous slope for the United States and for us as well. So we need to keep mobilizing, I think, the Canadian population, and that's one way to do it, for Mr. Trudeau to do it. And it brings the conversation also to the another level, political level. Who's best equipped to face that threat? And that's becoming a political conversation that we're having right now.
Okay, well, let's...
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like at this point, the Liberals resigning, like calling an election, I think the best way to diffuse this situation is to show that we can manage our crap and show that we can, assist or, strengthen this relationship with the United States without surrendering our sovereignty, because that to me, like from the beginning, this just give me a bad feeling. I'm just like, why would I want this?
This is what I mean,
sure,
right?
I want less taxes. Sure, I don't want as much national debt. But at the end of the day, like I'm born Canadian. Like I want to be Canadian. Like I like the fact that we're different than Americans. Like I don't look at us as the same way. And not in a bad way. I just look at like us, like we're still like a Commonwealth country, right? Compared to the U.S., which is like they're just something entirely different from the rest of the world, right? Where we still have this British parliamentary system, like most of the world has, and stuff like that, right? Like there's weaknesses on it, but I feel like we could build on it and make it even a better system than the U.S. in the long run.
Armando in the chat saying go BLT, and I'm assuming that means bilateral trade. And if that was the case, I would be all for it. I feel like
Dude, I could really go for a BLT, not gonna lie.
I feel like 95% of people would be in favor of a bilateral trade agreement, even something like a unified currency, probably. Like if he had gone about this in a smart way, he would have had absolutely no resistance. Nobody would be against that. Having an increased trade between the countries, a laxing of the borders, so you can go over the border to work and stuff. Well, whole bunch of people would have been in favor of that. And instead he starts talking about like annexing us, turning us into the 51st state, tariffing us 25%. Like now everybody's going to be opposed to this. So he's just creating a way worse situation for himself.
His own political, he is. Don't get me wrong.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's that's why I'm calling him stupid. I think that the way he's gone about this is
overconfident. I think he's just overconfident. I don't think he really understands failure very much. He's failed once, and even then, he didn't really accept it, right? Like, it took him years on a Lex Friedman podcast to admit he actually lost that election.
He will deny it now. He says that he was being sarcastic on that podcast.
I can't believe people didn't realize how big of a deal that was. That was the first time he admitted it. You know what I mean? That was the first time. Like, almost a whole term later, it took. And then that made me feel like either you knew the whole time, or did you figure this out somewhere along the line? I think in the moment, I don't think he did. I think in the moment you haven't read enough of the quotes, handle the failure. It's like Trudeau. Their brain can't handle the failure, so they just make it make sense that they didn't. Yeah, fail. But
initially, his initial reactions were different until Sidney Powell and all these people started coming up to him and making the case like, hey, we can challenge this in court. We can say that there was all this. And he would have these claims of fraud debunked in front of him and then go on stage the next day and repeat the exact same claim that his own team had told him was false.
Yeah.
I think I 100%, 150% know that he knew he lost. He just doesn't admit that because that's his philosophy.
I don't know. It's speculation, right? All we can do is speculate on that at this point. All we know is it took him 3.5 years to admit it. That's all we know.
Sure.
So that's all we can go off of. That's the objective fact there.
Try to understand a state of mind. You have to, when you're on a jury or making convictions on a trial, you determine someone's state of mind based on the evidence, right? And I think that Trump's state of mind, from what I've seen, clearly indicates that he knew he was lying. I don't know. That's my impression of it. Other people are obviously going to feel different. But I mean, I think that if you look at all the stuff he was saying, especially initially right after he lost and some of the stuff he did, where with the withdrawal from Afghanistan, he literally said, we'll just leave that for the next guy, because he knew that the timeline wasn't long enough.
Okay. And anything you feel that you have to support this stuff, if you can put it in the fact check spot, or if anyone else wants to put it in the fact check channel in the Discord, try and fact check us in there. If you guys have any objective links you want to say that's something we're saying and proving that we're wrong, please put it in there and we'll bring it up on stream and go over it. We'll get through this video and Saul can maybe show some of this stuff. So we can
a lot of these quotes are going to come from people that Trump has said
so it's quotes. It's quotes.
Taken away.
So it's just
from people who were talking to him. How else would you do it?
Okay.
Well, from his generals.
Okay.
People who are really close to him, who didn't have any reason to turn on him or lie about him.
Yeah, so it's just what people have said, basically, at this point.
Which is all we have for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that's what we have, right?
Okay.
I'm just saying, clarifying.
You can, sure. Okay.
There's no recording. There's just firsthand accounts,
he didn't
right?
say to the press, hey, I know that I lost and I'm lying. No. Okay. There's no statement like that to a camera. No. So I don't know if that's
we got a U.S. citizen saying he doesn't want all of Canada. He just wants part of Canada to join. Okay. Oh, yeah, I hope we can just really reach a good trade agreement between provinces and with the U.S. and just stop crippling ourselves as a
Armando, that's the thing that I've been saying. Armando, if he had just waited a couple of weeks, I don't even know if Trudeau would have dropped out. He might have ran against Pierre and just lost horribly. Like, we were weeks away from a non-confidence vote. And then Trump came in, started acting like an idiot, getting all belligerent. Parliament gets prorogued. Trudeau's stepping down. Tariffs are coming in. All this stuff. Mark Carney's in there now. And now, the polls aren't as certain as they were before. Pierre's probably still going to win. He had a quicker and a more certain path to victory before Trump came in and started meddling with everything.
He might end up with a minority government.
The way they were, it would have turned out wonderful for him.
You pause, so I think you're done. It's literally, I said this from the beginning. The worst case scenario for Pierre is a minority government, which is what those numbers reflect. 41% for the Conservatives is still a win, right? Like, yeah, they're not going to be able to get as much done as they want to get done. So stuff like Senate reform, good luck. And stuff like that is probably not going to happen. Like, Pierre would have to enact like emergency dictatorial like powers to get things done if he was, and I wouldn't agree with that, right? And it sucks, but I hope that maybe Mark Carney would be smart enough to work with Pierre on things that they agree on. I'd hope.
I think he'd be more likely
I think
to
we'd
than
have
Trudeau would.
a more productive Liberal Party and Conservative Party relationship. I don't think they'd be at each other's throats if they were willing to work more together and agree on more, which it sounds like they're starting to agree on more in terms of if Mark Carney becomes their leader, which has not happened yet. We have to remember that. That's not till March 7th, that election. So we won't know till March 9th who the leader of the Liberal Party is and our interim prime minister, who's more than likely going to be Mark Carney at this point. I can't see it being anybody else. I know even Frank Bayless, everyone's just ignoring him, and no one really cares about his whole thing. The mainstream media is parading Mark Carney around because he's the most popular now. He's the one everybody thinks of when they think of carbon tax Carney. You know, like he's the other to Pierre now.
Talk about that because, you know,
well, it's not majority territory with the polling numbers for the NDP and the Liberals at this point, because technically if the federal voting intention poll was a representation of the next election, we would end up with a possible Liberal NDP coalition that could restrict the Conservatives from getting things done.
Obviously, what's happening with Donald Trump and vis-a-vis Canada does not exist in a vacuum. We have happening right now a Liberal leadership race. We are facing a federal election sometime this year. October, of course, is when it's meant to be. Probably going to be a lot sooner than that. How does Donald Trump and what has transpired really in about 2
Yeah, I hope you're right, Genghis. Personally, I do. I think Saul doesn't. Saul likes Mark Carney. I don't know why, but he does. Me personally, I just think we need some common sense conservative government to. And it's funny because everyone's always saying that Mark Carney's taking all these ideas. And I'm like, yeah, it's almost like these ideas were common sense the whole time. Like it's almost like they're not that crazy of ideas.
2.5 weeks of his presidency. How has that affected the ballot question for Liberal leadership and for any eventual federal vote?
You know, look, we all thought the ballot question was going to be
majority.
The carbon tax and cost of living.
Who would want a block majority government? Like, how would that even work? Like, the country would have to be so equally divided, and Quebec would have to be so united for that to even flaunt possibilities. Even then, I think it's impossible.
A lot of Pierre's policies were things that the Liberals were about to do anyways. Like he has a really good way of kind of coming out and pretending something's like this like novel new idea that he's going to try, but it's
not
like
really. There was a lot
kind of agrees on.
Like the capital gains tax. That was some Pierre spoke about first. The consumer carbon tax. Some Pierre spoke about first. And they're not axing the tax completely like he wants to. They're only doing it on consumers, on the consumer side of the tax, right? We got to remember that the Liberals,
which is what most people complain about. Yeah.
Well, the problem is when everyone's saying he's removing the carbon tax, that's a little bit of misinformation and deceptive because he's not removing the carbon tax. He's reforming the consumer carbon tax.
Yeah.
So remember that.
Well, yes, cost of living is still the ballot question, but it's 20.
Yeah, I was saying the other day, if someone called me and said, "Hey, do you want to conduct this survey?" I'd be like, "No," and I'd hang up. I'm just hang up. I wouldn't even say no. I just hang up. You know what I mean? And like, you know, like who actually does these surveys?
I just don't have time for it usually. I've had people
who's
call me
participating in these polls. You know, like I feel like it's just a lot of people who are retired.
Probably.
Yeah, retired and watching mainstream media all day. I think those are the people doing the polls.
25% tariffs from Donald Trump, which has scared the country. And so we went out and we, with Nick Nanos, our pollster, and we asked Canadians who was best qualified to deal with Donald Trump. Almost 40% people say Mark Carney, and only 26%.
That's not an election poll.
It was in Ontario. It was It was a localized poll, from what I understand. It was not a national poll. Mm-hmm. So people need to remember that too. This was not a national poll. Everyone's parading. Some people on. I don't know why I fall into it. I get rage baited a lot online. I don't know why I fall into it. I fall into it all the time, and I'm just like you know, that's not what they're saying. And I'm like, wait, stop, okay. Don't respond. You're just
Twitter,
giving them what they want and give them the engagement they want.
Engagement farming. Yeah.
And only 12.5% said Freeland. All of a sudden, Mr. Carney has become the man to watch because Canadians look at him and say, this guy ran the Bank of Canada during the financial crisis, got us out of that in 2008, and he was there warning against pulling the UK out of the European Union. So he tried to manage the Brexit crisis. And we're scared. And he looks like the guy that might be they're saying he's the guy that's best qualified to do that. And you got to say that Mr. Poilievre and his people must be very, very concerned, because they're still calling him carbon tax Carney. And he's already said, like, I'm out of this. I don't believe in the carbon tax right now. I'd rescind it. And he's also moved to the center. He says, no capital gains tax. I'm for pipelines, I'm for electricity grids, I'm for cutting taxes. I mean, this is not the Pierre Elliott Trudeau party, that's the party of Jean Chrétien.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we certainly have been hearing comments around Carney even before the polling, quite the numbers. But how does it change the ballot question from what you're seeing, Mia?
Well, the ballot box question was already potentially changing.
Well, they've been saying this for forever. The Conservatives were saying that, like, they're going to rally around Mark Carney. Like, I think this is something that it was really up to Mark Carney when this is going to happen. It's like this guy coming out of, it's like their dream come true, these liberals who are still clinging onto their party. That's somebody who's somewhat competent.
I don't know, man. I think he's pretty ideologically different from Trudeau, in my opinion. I think there's a lot of people that wouldn't have been their first choice. Now they are, because they see how popular he is. Okay. Yeah, same reason all the Republicans eventually fall in line behind Trump, right? Initially, they'll all oppose him, but then they see the polling numbers. They're like, okay,
yeah, it's just
that's
like
our guy. We're all behind him.
Maester Pycelle opening the gates for the Lannisters, dude. Same thing.
How is that?
Just like, oh, now that you're the winning side, I'm going to choose your side, kind of thing.
Well, I don't think it's quite the same.
They're the type to flock to the winning side. You know what I mean? Like, that's why, like, Philippe Champagne.
That's the people who are
a lot of those guys who are endorsing Steve McKinnon.
That's more of the people who are saying, yeah, Trump, come in and annex us and take over our government. That's the Maester Pycelle thing.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stepping aside, because this was also going to be a referendum on his leadership and his prime ministership. He took himself out of the running for that, or his party forced him to anyway. And then you have the leadership candidates who all within first 10 days or so of the leadership campaign essentially took the carbon tax off of the table. For the Conservatives, it's difficult because they've been spending their entire preparation for 2 years preparing to campaign against two things, Justin Trudeau and the carbon tax. So you see them sort of struggling a little bit right now to pivot.
The thing is, people forget Trudeau is incredibly unqualified. Like, what qualifications did Trudeau even have, right? Carney has similar ideologies. Exactly. Like, Carney has similar ideologies. However, he is an educated,
he is
multiple Ivy League university man who somehow got the money to do that, coming from a grassroots background. Not on a scholarship for hockey. Could not find any evidence of that or any scholarship. I saw partial payment scholarships. That's it. That's all I could find. So,
yeah, and I just think he's more of a capitalist than Trudeau is. I don't think Trudeau has any ideological allegiance to liberalism.
That corporations need a conscience, and it's government's role to give corporations that conscience.
That's true, though, because a corporation, its best interest is to dump toxic sludge in a river, right? Government's the one that has to step in and keep them from doing that.
I guess maybe to what extent are you taking it, though? I guess that's the problem.
Sure, that's a fair question for sure, but I'm just saying it is government's role to step in places where a company is going to be interested in making profit above the welfare of the country, right? Or the consumer.
And I'm trying to also gain a foothold, because in a matter of a sort of a national crisis, if we want to call it that, against an international partner or someone like Donald Trump, it is actually the government and the governing party that people are looking to. And so Pierre Poilievre, sort of off to the side, is struggling to sort of find his way into that conversation. And all Canadians want to know right now is how we are going to deal with Donald Trump and how we're going to prevent these kinds of tariffs, or at least get them off the table if they do ever actually materialize. And the Conservatives haven't found a way into that conversation as much as they'd like to right now.
Denis?
Well, Mr. Poilievre has not adjusted his public discourse on the new evolving situation brought about by Mr. Trump and his attack on Canada. So he needs to adjust that. Just saying that carbon tax Carney is like Justin Trudeau will not cut it. So we're still waiting for him to adjust. Meanwhile, Mr. Carney is adjusting.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Armando. I guess that's a way of putting it. But yeah, in shorter terms, yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying is he's got a similar ideology to a lot of those people who are in that mindset, right? Of like, we're bringing humanity into a new age, Klaus Schwab kind of rhetoric. It's not like that. Maybe some of it's not that bad. I mean, it sounds like great things, but it's like, what is your definition of that, right? Is that,
I think
that's where it's the transhumanism thing, all that movement and stuff, everyone associates it with, because of how much that stuff gets a huge spotlight at stuff like the World Economic Forum, the stuff like the brain reading headsets for your workers, and saying not to discipline you, but just to,
okay, but who's the person who would be able to make those types of things? It's literally Elon Musk is also, he literally is a transhumanist, and he's completely in line with the Trump government. He's in charge of branches.
Why assume I'm a huge Elon Musk fan? Like, I'm not a huge Elon.
No,
Musk
I'm not.
fan.
I know you're not an Elon Musk fan, but I'm just saying
he's a
it's
billionaire.
funny that
other billionaires,
Carney being like technologically focused and saying we're at the start of a new industrial revolution. We need to be prepared for these changes. Elon Musk says the same things, and no one says, "Oh, he's a WEF shill." But then when Mark Carney says these things, it's
Elon
because
Musk
he's a liberal.
The only
all of a
one
sudden he's
to have
Klaus
pulled them
Schwab,
off.
right?
Like, honestly, Trump seems to have gotten a little cozy with WEF, and not Elon Musk. Elon Musk was the only one to be like, "Screw you guys," from what I saw. Like, he's like the only one, and him and Javier
Elon Musk
Milei
is a huge
are the only ones who have made these
opinion.
grandstands of like, "You guys suck. You guys are what's wrong with the world." Like, only him and Javier Milei have said anything like that, and I respect them for that. Trump didn't say that. Trump just said a bunch of stuff they're not gonna like, sure, but he didn't like tell them off or anything. He just said, like, they were like, it's like, "Welcome to President of the United States," and it was like normal WEF conference kind of thing, right? It was just like a normal.
Where did Carney say he wants to be a technocratic dictatorship?
Yeah, well, it's just everyone just to me that might be. I got to finish the book before I say you're taking leaps, but yeah, he definitely is very on the same page as a lot of those guys. But anyways, we're getting pretty distracted here and derailed, so we're just going to try and get through this stuff.
And how would I just feel like Elon Musk would be more in line with this kind of ideology than Mark Carney would? But anyway, sorry, go for it.
The center right, talking about military spending, yes, but also balanced budget. All those bread and butter issues that is, usually a strong element for the Conservative Party. So he's moving back to where traditionally the Liberal Party has been successful, to the center. And as Bob said, Jean Chrétien would be very happy because the Liberal Party will be flying with both wings with Mr. Carney.
That is true, right? It's almost just like now they're a serious contender. It's like they went from being just like not even a serious player to, okay, now you're in the game again, right? That's
now we're like instead of Jugmeet Singh Light, who we've got right now.
Yeah, whatever you want to call him, Timu, something, I don't know.
Yeah, like a half NDP party. It's
the first NDP prime minister.
Yeah,
it's not going to be you, Jagmeet.
Who called him that again? Who said Trudeau was the first NDP prime minister?
Pierre.
That's so funny.
In a question period, yeah, he said that.
Okay, well, we'll be watching that. That was good. I think it threw me off. Okay, but before we're done, because of this tariff threat from Donald Trump, we're talking about greater diversification for the Canadian economy, and all of a sudden we're revisiting, it seems, the discussion around two pipelines that were put to bed, Northern Gateway and Energy East. I'll ask you, Joe Denis, because Energy East essentially did not move forward because of opposition in Quebec. Where does that stand right now? Is this conversation? Is it a potential unity divider, or is this something?
We got a fact check coming through from Trevor in the chat here. 1 second. I'm going to pull it up on screen here.
Oh, NatPo. Man of Destiny wants to revolutionize society. It won't be pleasant.
Okay, I'm going to read it out. Just stop talking for a sec, Saul. So Peter Foster, Mark Carney, Man of Destiny, wants to revolutionize society. It won't be pleasant. So you can tell this article, starting off, not in favor of Mark Carney already. Let's go down. This is from June 5th, 2021. Last updated January 16th, 2025. So it's a pretty old article, eh? Mark Carney has announced his candidacy.
It's in the subtitle. What Carney ultimately wants is a technocratic dictatorship justified by climate alarmism.
Okay, so Mark Carney has announced his candidacy for Liberal Party leadership and Prime Minister. Originally published on June 5th, 2021, this in-depth Peter Foster column provides a unique look into Carney's ideas, particularly as expressed in his book Values, which me and Saul are both currently listening to the audiobook version of, narrated by none other than Mark Carney himself. Somehow I'm doing it.
I'm not listening to the audiobook. I have the ebook.
Oh, I'm on like chapter 5 now, so maybe that's why I'm going through it a little quicker. Mark Carney has announced his candidacy for Liberal Party leadership and okay, that was back then. In his book Values, Building a Better World for All, Mark Carney, former governor both of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, claims that Western society is morally rotten. All right. And that it has been corrupted by capitalism, which has brought about a climate emergency that threatens life on Earth This, he claims, requires rigid controls on personal freedom, industry, and corporate funding. Carney's views are important because he is UN Special Envoy on climate action and finance. He is also an advisor both to the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, oh really, on the next big climate conference in Glasgow, and to Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Since the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic, Carney has been front and center in the promotion of a political agenda known as the Great Reset, or the Green New Deal, or Building Back Better. Okay, really? They're calling the Great Reset the same as those two?
The Great Reset, the Building Back Better, and
you should have said the Green New Deal, Building Back Better.
Yeah.
Like the Great Reset, I don't think belongs in those lists there. All are predicted on the claim that COVID and its disruption of the global economy provides a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, not just to regulate climate, but to frame a more fair, more diverse, more inclusive, more safe, and more woke world. Okay, so this article is not very liberal-leaning. Carney
it's
draws.
NatPo. It's an opinion piece.
Well, that's the thing is, right? Like we're still going to read it out because he's fact checking.
I like NatPo. I read NatPo all the time. I think it's a good publication.
Carney draws inspiration from, among others, Marx, Engels, and Lenin, which he does talk about in his book. I read past that part so far. He talks in favor of Karl Marx. He did.
He doesn't talk in favor of Karl Marx. He talks about a bunch of different economics.
He gives him credit for things, right? Which is weird to hear because most people are just like Karl Marx. They don't want to talk. They won't give him say anything in favor of him. Whereas he did say a few things.
Serious,
not about his political ideologies, but about his economic record of some sort. But anyway,
he wasn't in charge of anything. He was just a philosopher, basically.
Second, it does not make a promise to make lives of ordinary people better, but worse. Carney's Brave New World will be one of severely constrained choice, less flying, less meat, more inconvenience, and more poverty. Assets will be stranded. Used gasoline-powered cars will be unsellable.
If that was a slogan.
Well, honestly, some of this stuff, like until recently, I thought some of this, like the whole stuff about electric cars, like until recently, dude, like until Trump won, a lot of this stuff would have like meat would get more expensive. Things were going down this trend like we are in Canada, right? With like beef becoming more expensive. You know, they're like testing with alternative protein sources. Like, you know, they just had like, you know, it's just weird. You know,
as the world gets richer, there's not enough room on the planet for everybody to be eating as much meat as we do. It's just not realistic.
Yeah, well, frig off. You're not taking my beef, okay?
I'm not telling anybody to take your beef. I'm just saying it is going to get more expensive as people get richer because there'll be a higher demand for it and there'll be less land to farm animals.
There's so much land to farm cows. Like, you know how cows can live in minus 40.
All right. If you think
we could have some of the biggest
you think
operations.
There's not going to be an
Canada.
Increased demand for meat as the world gets richer?
We'll switch to bison, dude. We're up north. We have so much land up here.
All right.
Just like make big bison farms. Let's do it. Screw crickets. The agenda's objectives.
I mean, if you can switch crickets out for bison, I'm all for that. I'm just saying, I think the problem is that there's just not enough room on the planet to make that
people are
many
being taxed
farms.
for owning cows in Canada.
Is that the problem?
That's part of the problem, in my opinion. It's the industry side of the carbon tax raising our beef prices right now. It's not the consumer side.
How much is the carbon tax raising beef prices?
It's like 40%. It's high.
I can't find that. I don't know where you get that number, but I can't find it. 40% seems high, but maybe you're right. I have no idea.
It could maybe also been just the one I was reading on. It could have been maybe just that one province that was subject to that higher rates. Maybe. The agenda's objectives are in fact. You also got to remember we're in BC, so the rates are a little bit like it's a bit different here, right? Because we already have a provincial one as well, right? The agenda's objectives are in fact already being enforced, not primarily by legislation, but the application of non-governmental, that is non-democratic pressure on the corporate sector via the never-expanding dictates of ESG, environmental, social, and corporate governance, which until recently was is now just being dialed back a little bit, and by sustainable finance, which is designed to starve non-compliant companies of funds, thus rendering them, as Carney puts it, climate roadkill. What ESG actually represents is corporate ideological compulsion. It is a key instrument of stakeholder capitalism. Carney's agenda is promoted by the United Nations and other international bureaucracies and a vast and ever-growing array of non-governmental organizations and fora, especially the World Economic Forum, where Carney is a trustee. Also, perhaps not surprisingly, by its corporate victims, no one wants to become climate roadkill. So that's the article. Anyone can find that. It's in the Discord, in the fact check column there. If anyone wants to check it out. I'm currently reading the book values. Saul is too. So we can, like, so far from what this article said, I haven't read the whole book. It doesn't surprise me if he goes in depth about a lot more of that stuff. I haven't really heard him talk about Lenin and stuff yet. So we'll see. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, to me, I just think it's hyperbolic to state the Great Reset's going to happen. Maybe if it was at one point really a thing, I think it's kind of dialed back a lot, and we're moving on to a different chapter now, unless that's all part of the plan.
Thing that Quebecers can rally behind right now.
I think my sense is that Quebecers can rally around that. We've seen the comments made by the Premier of Quebec, François Legault, evolving very much in a few days because of the threat from Donald Trump. And if Mr. Trump goes ahead with the tariffs, there will be a massive movement, I think, to try to, as I mentioned earlier, secure our economic sovereignty. And that is a bread and butter issues, and people will understand that we need to do our own things, make sure that we secure our energy, and we can find other markets, and that's going to be a critical element of the debate.
But companies are not going to come in and build these pipelines unless the governments provide financing for this, because they've been screwed the last time and they won't do it again. These things cost billions of dollars and they take many years, and you get halfway through and the government changes and they pull the plug on it. That's not going to happen. So we are going to have to put up the money to have these pipelines built. We should have had them built 10 years ago. We need them built now.
Yep. Okay. Well, we continue to follow the discussion.
Yeah, and I think everyone agrees with that. Energy East should never have been canceled. It would have actually put us in a much stronger situation with this recent tariff war if we had actually not canceled that project. So
yeah, I agree.
It's pretty funny in the long run. A little ironic, I guess, not more funny.
They were saying something about Quebec was really opposed to it, right?
Yeah, but anyways, so we got Steve McKinnon on CTV yesterday talking about this stuff. So this happened last night, dinner time, shortly after we finished streaming.
For joining us. I know you've just come from that economic summit hosted by the Prime Minister here in Toronto. As it was underway, you're probably aware at this point that President Trump spoke at the White House, saying he'll announce reciprocal tariffs on a lot of countries next week. It is a big escalation of his trade war. That's something different from the so-called fentanyl tariffs that Canada got a reprieve from earlier this week. Do you get any sense whether Canada will be exempted from next week's announcement by President Trump?
Well, look, Todd, let me level with you. Every day we wake up and something seems to change. Obviously, this week we informed Canadians that we had negotiated a 30-day pause. We know that there's some sort of April 1st review of our existing trade arrangements that's also going to happen. So those 2 dates are the dates that we have marked on the calendar. But this seems to be a moving target, Todd. And one thing that you can be sure of, though, that should something happen, and we're obviously plan A is to ensure that nothing happens, both in the interests of Canada and in the interests of the U.S., we believe. But should Plan B occur, Canada's ready. As we've reassured Canadians many times, I, as Minister of Employment, am ready to support Canada and Canadian workers, and we'll be ready as a government to react if those things should happen. It's hard to follow. It's very confusing, and if people want to follow this hour by hour, Todd, I know that it can generate an awful lot of anxiety. But just understand, I think it's important that your viewers understand one thing. This government is activated on every front. We are Team Canada, premiers, diplomats, union leaders, business people. I get calls from all over this continent, Todd, of people engaged in this issue, and we're going to keep right on rolling and protect Canadians and Canada the best we can.
You are the Minister of Employment, Labour. If a 25% tariff were to be applied to all Canadian exports, would that...
Who's this guy? Where's Vashti? And where's Mike Cloutier or whatever his name is? Like, who the hell is this guy? This guy's just glazing him right now. Just not even giving me hard questions so far. Like, rein it in, buddy.
Necessitate a big benefit, a stimulus for Canadians affected, like we saw during COVID-19 with the CERB program.
Well, look, it would be a very different kind of economic impact. It would obviously not be a positive impact on Canadian businesses, Canadian workers. And so we're ready with a tailor-made package, first to protect long tenured workers and trade exposed businesses, manufacturing businesses. I know we've all heard the sectors that we think are that may be particularly vulnerable, where those ties are long standing and very important between us and the United States
Yeah,
is the
Genghis
most integrated.
Yeah, I don't think she cares what you say, Genghis. I don't even think she cares what we say personally. But I was just about to give you a feather in your cap, Genghis. I was going to say, you want to call anyone at CTV a paid propagandist? This guy right here.
So we would have a series of supports ready to roll out on demand if this should occur. Again, I want to stress, our first job is to make sure it does not occur. But if it does, Canada has a strategic advantage, Todd. We have a better social safety net than the U.S. So the auto worker in Michigan or the farmer in Iowa cannot count on the kind of solidarity and supports that we have as automatic stabilizers in this country. And you can bet that we'll be there to make sure that we protect Canadians and Canadian workers.
If there was some sort of aid package, Minister McKinnon, would you bring back Parliament for that?
Well, we think we have all the tools that we require, so no. We have
basically
a plan
means we want to control the country. We don't want the voted representatives controlling the country. We want to be dictators. That's what it essentially tells me. That's what I get from this. Oh, yeah. You're doing the national credit. This is why it's bad etiquette to do this. Like, this is like
Trump is a dictator,
cutting House of Commons,
threatening the tariffs without Congress.
Sorry,
because that's the same thing. Trump trying to do tariffs without the support of Congress.
Yeah, I thought it was. I said that when he did it. I said that's why he declared the national emergency. I said that wasn't a smart move. I said that's aggressive.
Authority. He wants to be a dictator.
I don't think it means you want to be. Well, the thing is, it's a bit different in the States compared to us because, from what I understand, he still has there's still more moving pieces. He can't just do whatever he wants. Like he can't just. I don't understand with funding.
Well, he's trying to.
Funding wise, he doesn't have to go through Congress for the money though. But there's still
Congress controls the purse. All of the funding is supposed to be controlled by the purse. So even this whole U.S. aid thing, they can't cut that without the support of Congress. It's dictatorial to do that. It's literally in the Constitution.
Okay.
That Congress
we're talking about
controls
Canadian politics. I don't really.
I'm just saying. I was just making the comparison because you said that they were dictators for doing this. So
you just have to bring Trump into it. It's just like
I just wanted to know if you would also call him a dictator for doing
this.
This
is why people say you have TDS, dude. You're just so on top of it.
Well, I just want to see a consistent standard applied to people. I want to see if we're going to call these people dictators, are these guys also dictators for doing the same thing?
I think most people are on that point now. Like at this point, I think it's very authoritative and aggressive. I guess in a sense, I should say this. I shouldn't be saying. I guess what I'm trying to say is Trudeau isn't being dictatorial. He's being authoritative and aggressive. That's what I should say. Okay, that's the best way to call it.
Okay.
That is ready to go, that is developed within the existing capabilities of myself as Minister of Employment and the Government of Canada. So we wouldn't wait. I don't think we need to be told that we need to be there for Canadian workers. We know that, and we will be.
All right, at today's summit, CTV News learned the Prime Minister...
Being a devil advocate all the time just gets annoying a little bit. That's my personal experience dealing with Saul at this point. It's like, it's just like... It's like who do we?
I'm not even.
Have?
I just
like can we just blow off?
I'm a stickler for consistency. I think if you're gonna have a consistent standard laid across the field, I don't have any problem with what people are saying. It's just when people are being hypocritical and like not applying a consistent standard across the board, that gets me super triggered, and I start going off about Trump and stuff. Then I'm like, why are we not calling a spade here?
Warned everyone in attendance that President Trump, Minister McKinnon, is not joking when he makes comments about wanting to annex Canada, somehow make Canada a 51st state within the United States. What does that mean to you?
Well, what it means to me is that we have someone who's gotten some very strange ideas that are different. So we can't assume that the same kind of mindset exists in our friends to the south. And they are our friends, I should stress. Americans are and always will be our friends. But Canada is a free country, a sovereign country. Canada will decide on its own destiny. And Todd, Canada is forever. And there is absolutely no part of this country that has any desire to be annexed or part of the United States of America. We have significant differences. We've made our own choices, and we're going to pursue the path that we choose. Now, we have our own differences internally, we know, regionally. Sometimes we have some political differences, but I don't detect a single shred of disunity on this one thing. We're proud Canadians. We're going to stay proud Canadians, and we have boundless opportunity. Out of this summit today, Todd, I just want to stress, I would be remiss if I didn't. The opportunity and optimism that came out of this group of Canadian business people, of Canadian labor leaders, Canadians from all walks of life who are making recommendations. But what they bring is this incredible sense that this country has unexploited potential, unexploited possibilities. We have some work to do on that, and we're resolved to do that work. But once we get that work done, this country has the most promising future that it is possible to imagine. We have everything we need to succeed. That includes one of the world's most educated and capable and skilled workforces, natural resources. We have everything we need.
I thought he was going to say, I thought he was going to talk about Mark Carney. I'm like, okay, Stephen, reining in, buddy. You're making it a little too easy there, buddy.
Between our hands, and we now have to make the choices for growth. We have to choose to pursue markets inside this country and outside this country in places including the United States, but not restricted to the United States. There should be nothing but optimism for the people who are watching this program, Todd. We have a great future ahead of us.
But is your government operating with an understanding that, in fact, Trump wants to somehow annex Canada? And what does that mean for the federal government's response to that, Minister McKinnon?
Why don't you squint harder, CTV reporter, like whatever your name is?
It hasn't crossed our mind. We make our decisions.
It reminds you like Adam DeMamp doing that, like, or Adam Devine, that like bit he has about guys who are like good looking. They always look like they just got sand in their eyes. They're just like, whoa, you know.
In the interest of Canadians, in the interest of pursuing growth for Canadians, in the interest of pursuing prosperity for Canadians, and making our own choices. Mr. Trump, I think, seems to have gotten some ideas. This is not new. We've seen it in his social media. We've seen it expressed in various forms. I think it's a form of leverage seeking. He seems to always want to accumulate leverage in negotiations. But let me say, Canada's got a lot of leverage too. And we'll absolutely be deploying that leverage and making our U.S. friends at all levels very aware of the adverse economic effects that would befall the United States were they to engage in a protracted trade dispute.
We've seen a lot of unity from all provinces, including the province you and I are both from, Quebec, of course. It's an interesting time for our country to see Canadians rallying around the flag. This trade war has also helped to galvanize your government provinces to push more for the diversification of Canada's economy to become, Minister McKinnon, as you know, less reliant on the United States. We send 75% of our exports there. But we have less than a month left in this current tariff pause. Your government has been in power for 2015. So my question, why should Canadians believe that it is your team that can bring significant change in just, let's say, 3.5 weeks?
Look, we have a very positive, a lot of this work's been going on, by the way, for a long time. It certainly has new impetus. It's an easier conversation now with my provincial counterparts when we talk about labor mobility. Anita Anand
that's what I've
finds
been saying,
the same
Melissa.
thing when she talks about internal trade barriers. The first market we should seek to develop is the market that is in our own country, Todd. On that, we're finding obviously broad agreement and a new impetus to act. We need to continue to diversify the destinations for Canadian exports. That's work that's been going on for a long time, obviously has achieved a new urgency. That work is going to continue. But Todd, let me just say one other thing. It's time to build up our country, to build supply chains, to expand our ports, to expand our energy infrastructure, to expand our electricity production.
Now's the time,
Todd,
right
we
before
have to build in this country.
And...
We have such amazing potential. We have some of the largest pension funds in the world who are looking for projects in which to invest. This country has boundless potential, and I know that we're very, very eager to get on with reaching that potential.
Before we go, let me ask you about Canadian energy, most of which, as you know, again, sold to the U.S. There are some ministers in cabinet saying we need to rethink the idea of a west-east pipeline. You are a minister representing a riding in Quebec where that idea is very controversial. Are you willing to try and push through a pipeline through Quebec?
Well, it has been controversial. I think many Quebecers are surprised to wake up to the news that it is possible, at least technically or theoretically possible, that the U.S. could cut off our supply of Canadian oil because sections of the pipeline that brings it to Quebec and to Ontario go through the United States. So, Minister Wilkinson has expressed that we need to at least take another look at that. We need to be self-sufficient in our country. We have petrochemical industries and other industries that can benefit from these things. We have to at least take another second long look at that kind of infrastructure. But more generally, my earlier comment remains. We need to build up our infrastructure of all kinds. We need...
Like, the thing is why, like, Pierre already said, like, he wouldn't necessarily, he would allow the government to respond to the tariff issue before calling on confidence. Did he not? Like they would actually have, like, from what I understand,
that was what they were going to do. Yeah, before
they would be able to reconvene and do things before they got the voted on confidence. From what I understand, they could get a few things done before they were thrown out. If Jagmeet Singh supported the idea. Why are they so afraid to end prorogation if they're not just trying to?
Because they're if they just elect a new leader right now. That's
they just want to push everybody out of it. You know what I mean? But you can't elect a new leader at this point.
Trudeau.
You can't do
Trudeau
it at this
didn't
point.
want to.
It's just the dumbest time to be doing it. Like the worst time possible. Worst time possible.
Yes, because Trudeau refused to step down when it would have been actually a good idea to step down. Decided to wait till the absolute last minute when something extreme was happening, and now he wants to have a 2 to 3 month leadership race. And then
it's absolute bullshit. Like it's just absolutely.
It is. Yeah, it's really stupid. It's just horrible leadership.
Yeah, like I hope he just ends up a stain on the record forever and never has an actual career. Like,
yeah, he will be.
Need a career.
I think this was if he had stepped down a year ago, he could have at least somewhat salvaged his legacy. Obviously, the people who hated him would have still hated him. I mean, I wouldn't have still had a positive opinion, but I would have appreciated him stepping down before we got to this point, right? But yeah, whatever.
It's just so stupid.
It is better really electric grids. We need more power generation, clean energy coming from Canada, hydroelectricity, in some cases nuclear energy. Todd, we have to build up our ability to supply ourselves and to be resilient. And if that involves taking a look at some things that may not have had success in the past, then so be it.
The Quebec government, though, and the Bloc Québécois have basically said, Minister McKinnon, that a pipeline through Quebec is a complete non-starter.
Well, the Bloc Québécois doesn't run a darn thing, Todd. It's the government of Quebec, Mr. Legault, who's said some very encouraging things this week about strengthening our ability to work in and develop markets right across this country. That's the kind of partnership that we're looking for. I know Mr. Legault is thinking many of these things as well. We have to develop ourselves economically in Quebec, and we have to do that right across this country. The Bloc Québécois will never exercise power in this country, and will never achieve their main project, which is to separate Quebec from Canada and leave a French-speaking island in the sea of North America. That is an absurd project, just as absurd, Todd, as putting 25% tariff.
You call them a French island in the sea of North America? Jeez.
On Canadian exports.
Steve McKinnon is Canada's employment minister, joining us today from Toronto. Minister McKinnon, always great to have you with us on Power Play. Thank you for your time.
Wow, what a jerk-off interview. That was the most, like, might as well had knee pads on, buddy, interview I've ever seen on CTV with a Liberal. Like, actually. Like, that was ridiculous. It
just wasn't very adversarial.
It was pathetic interview, in my opinion. That was just so friendly. Too friendly. So get Vashi back, get Mike back, anybody else. Like, what the hell was that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the only reason he agreed to go on is it was that guy.
I don't know.
Just so stupid. Anyways.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Todd.
Toronto. Senator Hassan Youssef was there, a former president of the Canadian Labour Congress, now in addition to the Senate, a member of the Prime Minister's Council on Canada-U.S. Relations. Senator Youssef, thank you for joining us.
This guy looks like Planet of the Apes. Holy.
Listen, I need.
He looks like he looks. It's rough. I was gonna say he looks like if he had a beard and a toucan, he looked like a homeless guy. But this guy's like a billion. This guy's super rich. He's like a multi.
He's got a really rugged looking face. He just looks very. It's like an old picture. You know, this looks like it's from like the early 1900s.
He looks like he's in the wrong century.
Yeah, yeah.
To start with that comment we heard from the Prime Minister, and I know it was not meant to be shared widely, but we did get his assessment of Donald Trump, that this idea that Trump is very much sincere in his desire to annex Canada. I know you have U.S. contacts. What do you make of that assessment? Does that surprise you in any way?
Well, I think what surprised me is the president does not understand.
His voice just surprised me. Whoa, I was expecting like a deep, rugged,
a deeper voice. Yeah.
Yeah. What was that?
Our resolve as Canadians, we believe in our country. We are, of course, dedicated to ensure it remains sovereign and free from foreign influence and foreign interference. And I think what the president has said is giving Canadians, regardless of where they come from across this country, reason to wake up and say, not on our watch and not ever this is going to happen, where we'll become part of the United States.
Now, one of the responses, of course, to all of this is this coming together of Canadian leaders, revisiting, refocusing on tearing down interprovincial trade barriers. The premiers now seem very much on board with this idea, but it's also going to take industry leaders, professional associations, unions. As a former union leader from your contacts, are those parties ready to jump on board with this discussion and bring down barriers?
I think for the first time in history in my lifetime, what I'm seeing and hearing from those who are here, but also people I'm talking to, there is a national consensus that's I think is developed as a result of the threat from the United States, that once and for all, let's break down these interprovincial trade barriers. Let's have freer trade.
There will be no messing with the 49th parallel, period.
Canada's free. Canada is sovereign. Canada will choose its own destiny. Thank you very much.
The president has been very clear that he is continuing to have the conversation around the annexation, which...
Is that Willem Dafoe? Is that that's the guy who played the Green Goblin? Was that Willem Dafoe? Am I thinking of the right person?
Willem Dafoe,
yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
most Americans don't take seriously. I would say we don't believe, generally that that's actually something that's real or in a real agenda.
President Trump isn't joking when he talks about Canada becoming a 51st state. That's the message. CTV News has learned that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau delivered to attendees at an economic summit that he hosted today in Toronto. Just how seriously should we take the threat? Let's bring in the front.
Canadians are watching right now.
I can't handle that reporter. He's just not really just like talking. He's basically just a model reading a teleprompter.
They're watching to see that our leadership collectively.
Well, he's good look. He's good looking. I'll give him that. You know, I'm thinking give credit where it's due.
Is able to meet this moment, is able to step up, is able to be there to say, this is Canada, we got this, and this is how we're going to do it.
This is about Canada being ambitious. This is about Canada being confident. This is about.
Dude, it was. I don't know who.
This catches me off guard.
Who started calling this guy a Chihuahua, and I don't understand the reference. I don't know if it's just because of his mannerisms, but I literally saw. I think it was like Canadian Looney did one of his thumbnails, and he's literally got him next to a Chihuahua. It was just like, what is this? It was so funny.
Canada winning in the economy of the 21st century.
The tangible results in the next 30 days for us to reduce red tape, for us to eliminate barriers to trade, and for us to build a domestic economy without going through Donald Trump is here and is now.
All right, and there you have it. What can Canada do quickly to insulate and protect against threats, economic and verbal, coming from President Trump?
Holidays or something?
And the very real
everybody's on holidays. He's just like the fill-in.
Possibility.
No, it's power play. It's power play.
Early March, we will be in a trade war. It's the challenge that
she's off, and Mike Lecoutier, who did a way better job, is off because he did a great interview. Maybe he got in trouble for grilling the Liberal too hard in the last interview he did.
is facing every government nationwide, federal, provincial, municipal. There are a lot of ideas, but 3.5 weeks is a very tight timeline. Let's bring in the front bench, Sabrina Grover.
His eyebrows don't move. Like, he's just constantly squinting and they don't move. It just drives me nuts.
Melanie Paradis, Najoud Al-Malisi. Najoud, I want to start with you here. What needs to happen in your mind?
To get rid of internal trade barriers?
Absolutely. Whatever needs to happen. All the different strategies. Yes.
Well, I think that right now there's clearly momentum for change, for political leaders to do something. And so, for example, on internal trade barriers, we're in a moment where premiers are all talking about this in unison. We are talking about building pipelines potentially. You know, the Quebec government suggesting that it would be open to a project of LNG between Alberta to Quebec. And so there is clearly a window of opportunity that the Prime Minister has referred to as well to take action. The reality is that the barriers to growing Canada's economy have been known for years, and it will take a willingness to potentially challenge interest groups on some of these points. And so it's easy to become a little bit skeptical of how much governments will actually accomplish during this time, given the short time frame until tariffs could come into place, but also because of some comments they've made, such as, you know, parties suggesting we're not interested in reconsidering supply management, which controls the production of things like dairy. And so I guess really time will tell if we'll see real political change on some of these big economic issues, regulatory burdens in the country. But you can be sure that nothing is going to be monumentally different in 30 days, which is the deadline that the president has given us.
And Sabrina, because of the size of the U.S. economy, like it or not, are we all dancing to Trump's tune?
You know, I would say that this moment is kind of like that gold medal hockey game where Canada's against the United States, and you are seeing Canadians.
Why are the Liberals making all these hockey analogies lately? Like, do you think this makes them more relatable? You know, because she's like the Liberal analyst, from what I understand.
Come together and like actively root for the United States to lose. And this is the best time and the most exciting momentum to use to build that internal trade prospect and to build that domestic economy that Canada knows it's possible. I think, you know, we've already seen significant movements. I saw in the Logic today, former senior minister in Legault's government, Fitzgibbon, saying that Quebec could be open to an LNG project in Canada. And that is a real diversion from where we were, you know, 6 months ago, a year ago. So I think that the momentum is certainly there to remove those trade barriers. And I think that's the first step for Canadians to reactivate our economy. But I think more importantly, beyond Canada, is we have, you know, hundreds of other states that or countries that we can be negotiating agreements with. We have a lot of untapped market potential when it comes to the African continent. We started a little bit of that work last year, but we've never really gone to it to full extent. We have a collaboration agreement with the European Union. I think that could be strengthened. And we've already tapped into Asian markets. There's a lot of potential for Canada. It's just about activating it and reorienting.
So what do you think about them just trying to strengthen other ties and not try and strengthen the relationship with the United States? Do you think that they should move away from being friendly with the United States and try and strengthen ties with other countries? Like, I don't think that's a good idea at all.
Every country in the world is going to be doing that right now because nobody is going to want to trade with the United States because they have no idea what this guy is going to do because he's threatening tariffs on everybody. He's acting all crazy. No, he's unpredictable. Who wants to make trade agreements with somebody who's unpredictable? Nobody. Why would you want to do business with someone like that?
Well, Trump is in a lot of business.
Yeah, that's true. He's got the market. Like, he's got a huge economy. If he was smart, he would want to trade with people, but he's doing this weird protectionism thing. So it's going to make everybody else not want to trade with them anymore.
We'll see. I just think that that's not the answer of how we're going to combat the rest of the world or how we're going to take on this next century. Is not by tearing apart the only thing that keeps this continent together, which is the
absolutely. So why the hell? Why? So Trump needs to stop doing it because that's who's trying to tear apart North America right now and make us all be adversaries instead of partners.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of countries. Yeah, well, yeah, Japan just struck the LNG deal yesterday or today. Was it yesterday or today with the U.S.? And that's what Poilievre actually said. That Poilievre said that all these people that were looking to Canada were being denied these business deals and being denied these requests.
Yeah, which is crazy.
It's just so stupid. It's like, what are you doing? Like people are I'm starting to think Trudeau's actually high. I'm starting to think he actually has a drug problem. Like, 'cause nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. Like, incompetence and malicious intent don't even excuse it all. It's just all over the place. It's just like, he must just be out of his mind. You know what I mean? Like, that's the only thing that makes sense to me.
Our own minds away from the United States.
And to you, Mel, and let me be blunt, you know that interprovincial trade barriers have been an issue for so long. And I'm just curious to get your read. You know, the idea that now that we've averted a trade war, at least for now, there may be less urgency. You know, that unless there's actually a trade war that's going on, you know, just the threat isn't enough to start really making effective change on bringing down those barriers and getting rid of some of the protectionism that's out there.
Oh, I think that the threat is enough. I think I agree with Sabrina that this tone shift has been massive. And politicians across the country are going to be taking advantage of that and moving quickly to change the regulations that we need to change, to repeal bad pieces of legislation like federally, Bill C-69, which is the Anti-Pipelines Act, that needs to go. We need to change regulations to cut red tape to make Canada more competitive. We need to make massive investments in our Arctic for national security reasons, and also to invest in infrastructure to connect it to the rest of the country for sovereignty. We need to invest in.
Yeah, you got that from the tampon. That's what happened. You got poisoned from.
Well, it's toxic. It's toxic shock syndrome.
Is tampon part of the syndrome, or was it what gave him the syndrome?
No.
I'm trying to.
Well, toxic shock syndrome is when you have a tampon in for too long, I think. And gives you toxic shock syndrome.
Okay, let's just move on.
Sorry.
Rail and pipe.
Too much of a man for that conversation.
We need to leverage our quantum industry, our AI industry. Canada's actually a world leader in quantum technologies and in AI, and we need to keep investing in that to hold that position. And to the point about trade deals, we should be negotiating CANZUC, the Canada, Australia, New Zealand, UK trade agreement. But you know what all of this requires? Requires Parliament to be sitting, requires people to be back in the House of Commons voting on changes to legislation and voting to pass budgets. So that we can
almost like the government doing what it was designed. Almost like, the representatives of the people doing the work, not just the Liberals. You know what I mean? The Liberals don't represent the whole country. They represent a minority of the country technically right now, based off the last election results. And if you go by the current polling results, it's like less than a quarter of the country supports them.
Spend money to do these things.
Yeah, we're almost out of time, but back to you, Sabrina. Is that likely to happen? I mean, we had the Minister McKinnon on earlier in the show, and he said, no, Parliament's not going to come back early.
I mean, listen, it's so interesting to hear so many Conservatives talk about how great Parliament is when they spent the last 4 months of the last session stalling every piece of legislation that came before.
Okay. This drives me freaking nuts. That was the Liberals' fault. They handed over redacted information, and it wasn't just the Conservatives. Every other party and the Speaker ruled in favor of it. Okay? So stop acting like Pierre obstructed Parliament when it was Trudeau and the Liberals being incompliant and in contempt of Parliament and not doing their damn jobs properly that caused them to get nothing done for all those months. Not Pierre.
Both of them they both were doing it. Because Pierre could have just let it go until he won the election if he wanted to. But he didn't. He wanted to make a big deal out of it. It was both of them contributed to it.
No.
Takes two to tango.
Dude. They were found doing something horribly wrong. They were caught. They wanted them to forcibly admit
I'm not
it.
saying that they shouldn't have done that.
Then they preach about rights. The same government that froze people's bank accounts who were Canadian citizens, non-terrorist Canadian citizens, froze their bank accounts. Same government is talking about rights and their right. You know what I mean? Like, screw off. Like, who are you guys? And then to me, I just don't get it. I just don't get how they're able to cling on to this so desperately. It's like, it's not because of the Conservatives that it was obstructed. Why did Craig Fergus rule in favor of it then? The Speaker.
I'm not saying it was unreasonable. I think it's fine.
Blake Desjardins was going on saying in favor of it. Blake, the NDP MP in freaking New West BC was in favor of it. Like, everybody was in favor of it, not just the Conservatives. It was the one thing they all agreed on.
I'm not saying that it wasn't, but I'm just saying that if you don't want to do anything in Parliament besides that, then that's what's going to happen.
I just think it's just so stupid, this whole thing.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that they weren't complicit in it. Obviously, the Liberals were a part of that, but I just think the Conservatives were also doing it. They all wanted to make that the hill they were going to die on.
I don't necessarily take it that way at all, because to me, it's like, are we just going to let the Liberals, like they literally are being caught red-handed with like complete corruption. And we're just, somehow this is not their fault that things are being, like, maybe if you did your jobs and weren't corrupt and trying to steal from the Canadian people, nobody, or take advantage of your positions, whatever you want to call it, stealing or taking advantage of positions, why did you guys just hand over the unredacted documents if you had nothing to hide? Why not hand over all the documents? Like, why heavily redact 29,000 pages?
Yeah, I'm not saying that the Liberals aren't responsible for it. They are.
I'm just saying this rhetoric just drives me nuts from the Liberals. Like, I just cannot get past this because it's just a complete lie.
Before them, so
was she saying it
I'm
was
not
all
sure
their
the
fault?
value.
Yeah, she said, look.
The Minister McKinnon on earlier in the show, and he said, no, Parliament's not going to come back early.
I mean, listen, it's so interesting to hear so many Conservatives talk about how great Parliament is when they spent the last 4 months of the last session stalling every piece of legislation that came before them. So I'm not sure the value that I believe the value of Parliament today from the mouths of Conservatives, but I don't think it's going to happen before the end of the prorogation.
That's what I mean. How do you believe the value of Parliament from Liberals then? The ones who are literally stealing from you too.
They don't care about, the Liberals clearly don't think it's important because they're proroguing right now.
That's what I mean.
Nobody's arguing against that. They're just saying that the Conservatives also weren't doing anything for 4 months besides that.
I'm too
so
freaking angry, man.
It's not like anything was getting done anyways.
It's like getting really.
They should have come out a long time ago. I'm not trying to excuse the fact that Justin Trudeau is still in there or that they're not letting the documents out. I'm just saying that I understand the point that if it's so important that it keeps going, then you wouldn't be stalling it like that over something.
Yeah,
but I guess it wasn't anything they thought was super important. They just wanted to stall until the Liberals handed over the documents or whatever they wanted them to do. And then, I mean, even then, they probably would have just used that as a reason to say that they're not going to support anything going forward because they want to call a non-confidence vote, right?
This whole thing is just so stupid. And you know what? This is why we're susceptible.
Nobody's been focused on getting anything done for the last
weak
year.
As a country. Well, no, because the thing is like getting Trudeau out, because Trudeau was preventing a lot. Like, what was Trudeau doing? Like, the Conservatives, the best thing they can do
dental
to get
programs and stuff.
Dental program, spending more and more money. That deficit was $61.9 billion. We're 4 years after COVID. This government has spent more money, even without COVID measures, than any other all prime ministers of all time combined. This administration spent more money than all of them. Like, granted, there's inflation, sure, but still, it's like.
I mean, I agree that the Liberals are dumb and they've done a horrible job and all that stuff. Like, I'm not really arguing against that. I'm just saying that I agree that nothing was getting done in Parliament. That's all it was.
Scheduled for March 24th. And I think that a lot of work can get done outside of Parliament. And I think a lot of that work has to be done with the premiers, which is almost the number one goal, right? Like, making sure that as we break down the internal trade barriers, that premiers are talking to each other, that premiers are all on the same page with the federal government, and that we're all swimming in the same direction.
And 30 seconds left for you, Najud. Are we at that point? Are we ready?
Well, the Liberals drained the pool, lady, for 4 months. So we'll see what happens.
Try and hack
2.5 months, I guess. Sorry.
Through some of those trade barriers now, given the threat and moving forward.
Well, I think politicians have a little bit of political cover because of the threat that U.S. tariffs pose to actually go ahead and knock some of those down. The Internal Trade Committee, which oversees the internal trade free trade agreement in Canada, is supposedly putting together some recommendations for first ministers to begin taking down those barriers. So we'll just have to wait and see whether there's going to be like previous rounds of addressing this issue, or whether there will be actual real momentum for some of this to be taken down.
Najud Al-Malise joining us, Sabrina Grover, as well as Melanie Paradis. Hey, great to see all three of you again. Thanks for taking time for Power.
All right, well, that's it for that video. Yeah, I got a little trigger there, not going to lie, for sure. But, yeah, just I can't remember this next video.
Rob, I've also said that if it was a choice for me, if I could pick right now, Pierre or Trudeau to lead the country, and that was who was going to lead the country for the next 4 years, and it was, you know, this is obviously a hypothetical situation, but I would have picked Pierre. I don't want Trudeau in power. I don't think he's a good leader for the country. It's not like I'm like a hard line. I hate the Conservatives so much, and I have to make sure that they get blamed for things. I just think that it's not, I don't know. I kind of agree that they weren't really getting anything done anyways.
Well, the thing is I guess what I'm trying to say is I get frustrated by this point that they keep clinging to, because it's like, you guys, it's almost like you're getting mad at, it's almost like you get a ticket and you're just mad at the person who gave you the ticket instead of yourself or admitting any fault at all, right? It's like that. That's why, because they were given, like they're being held in contempt. Like any other speaker would have held them in contempt of Parliament, but Fergus didn't. You know what I mean? Like he just didn't. And I think that's why, like, it's just so stupid. I think the whole thing going on, like we are basically in this point where everyone's like, even our politicians are so fearful of losing our democracy that they're destroying it themselves. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's what's happening right now. Is like they're like cutting each other out of important decisions because they are essentially afraid of the other party's ideology. Both sides. I'm talking about both sides here. You know what I mean? Like and the liberals themselves, like in this sense, right? Like, to not include the voter representatives of the people isn't your choice in these situations. It's not your choice. It's your duty. So it's the people's right to have Parliament figure these problems out. And if a non-confidence vote it happens because of Parliament, that is because the people have spoken. By the people they've elected.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that I don't know what the history of prorogation is supposed to be used for.
This is normal. This is normal. This is normal for
all I'm saying is that they haven't broken the law to prorogue Parliament.
No. But all these, never before has anyone prorogued during a crisis, such as during a national crisis of any kind.
It's irresponsible.
It's usually something you do when things are calm, right? Like when Harper did it, we weren't in the middle of a national crisis. Like, yeah, there was problems. In our economy.
There was a non-confidence vote looming, and he had an incoming. He didn't want to release documents pertaining to a scandal that was going on with him. Those were both of his prorogations.
Yeah, and
right? It's not like nobody else has done that
either. I would love to know why he did that. But Harper was very known for being very big on optics, right? Like, from what I understand, like he's a very optic guy, like over what was actually happening.
One of the things that I've kind of had trepidations too about Pierre and like his notwithstanding clause thing is that anytime these people break a norm and do something like that, it's just a tool for every future administration to use, right? So like, who's to say if Harper hadn't done it before him that Trudeau would be comfortable getting away with this, right? Like, if there might have been a bigger backlash if this wasn't something that people had already seen before. It takes away a lot of the luster out of their, like, for the Conservatives to get all mad about it this time. It's like, well, you didn't get mad about it last time, and now you have to do this thing where you're like, well, last time there wasn't a crisis, and it's not really the same because this is a bigger deal, and you have less support. You know, like they have to make up reasons why it's different, which there is. I agree, but I'm just, they've made the case harder for themselves.
Who's making up reasons?
No, you have to make up come up with reasons why. Sorry, I said make up. Come up with reasons why this is different than the time Harper did it.
Well, it's clear.
And you wouldn't have to do that if Harper hadn't done it, right? If Harper had not done that, it'd be easier to make a big deal out of this. As soon as this announcement
came in, as soon as the tariffs were actually coming in, he should have unprorogued. He should have unprorogued, and because he prorogued before, from what I understand.
I mean, I've given up expecting the responsible or the smart or even any kind of calculated decision from Trudeau. I haven't ever seen him do something where I'm like, damn, wow, he really handled that really well. It just never happens.
Yeah, I just think I'm getting angry. I feel like everyone's just so angry at him. Like, I'm angry because it's like, regardless of what side of the fence you're on, like, don't you want just the democracy to happen? Like, regardless of what you're afraid democracy will accomplish, it's still democracy. So you don't really get a say. It's the same thing. If Carney wins this election, I can't whine and complain about it because democracy has spoken in that sense. It's like we have we have to go with it. Like, I can hope for the best and hope that some of what, I hope for this country gets implemented. However, at the end of the day, like, you can't just dispute the whole thing and call it all garbage and burn it all on the ground because you don't agree with it. You know what I mean? And that's almost what I feel like is kind of happening with them prorogating at this given moment in time. And granted, the thing is the Conservatives could step, which I thought he already had said, like, yeah, let's just get this done together. Like, from what I got from his last speech is he didn't say he'd vote non-confidence right away. Like, if they unprorogue,
well, I would just
it'd look bad for Pierre, honestly, if he did. I think what they should do, end the prorogation, figure out an actual game plan, pass it through the proper system, which you have a stacked Senate anyways. I don't know why you're afraid of this. And like, it just doesn't make any sense why they're prorogating right now. It's just stupid.
Well, it's because they just want to get the new leader installed and then do the election after that.
Yeah, which is just absolutely ridiculous. I hope they do. I hope they're not going to try and postpone it after that. But Jagmeet Singh has said that he's not going to vote no confidence if he approves of the Liberal leader, because that would be better than Mark Carney, better than Pierre getting into power.
There would be nothing more discrediting for Jagmeet Singh and everything he's ever said. Well, I mean, it's not like
he's already hit rock bottom. He's already rock bottom.
So I'm saying it's you can't vote in the globalist banker after claiming you're like the worker party worker guy for the worker people and worker, ripping up the agreement, and then support some guy who got installed who's literally like not a populist at all, you know? And I mean, maybe he can kind of pull on those strings down the road, but like complete opposite ideologically from Jagmeet Singh.
Anyway, so the poll I put up earlier, what you guys think? Do you want Canada to be the 51st state? So 69% were no, 30% were yes, with 36 votes. So honestly think that's a pretty... I think like
that's probably not the whole country where it's going to be a very
but if you're
skewed
in a national
poll for
poll,
our
I
audience.
do feel like it's higher than 10%, but I don't feel like it's higher than 20.
Based on what though? Like what makes you feel that way?
I said it's not broad objective data. I said it's not. I admit that. It is just my feelings and emotional response to firsthand accounts of my firsthand experiences. And I'll admit that. But my intuition, I guess.
I think that I feel like people just need to think about what that entails, right? Like becoming the 51st state isn't a real thing. Like that's not how this would work at all, right? Like this would entail a whole bunch of bureaucratic bullshit that would have to come in.
What would happen to First Nations treaties? How pissed off would they be? Like what would happen to all that? And like
there's
if the Crown
many
owned
things
everything,
that just stop making sense.
Like to me, I don't think
everything would break down.
They don't want to absorb us. He wants to replace the Crown. That's what I'm getting from it. Is he wants to replace the Crown, not absorb us. Like he wants us.
What does it mean to replace the Crown? Does the Governor General, is that like an American representative now?
We gave $3 billion to the Crown last
over
quarter,
how long?
Over in one quarter, due to the fact that it said as per request of Sir Majesty King Charles. That's what it said. We read it on stream.
Out of court settlements with Indigenous people.
No, it's not that. We read it on stream. We're breaking down that budget on stream after the deficit or the thing was tabled, right? We ended up going through it a bit, and that was on there.
Yeah.
And I was saying, like, what the hell is this? Right? Like, and it's because they're having a lot of issues, and I think it's just what Britain does to the Commonwealth countries. They're used during their crises, they siphon money from the Commonwealth for I don't know what reason anymore. It doesn't make much sense.
Canada does not send money to the British monarchy. Instead, Canadians pay for the Canadian Crown, which supports the Governor General and Lieutenant Governors and the historic buildings they live and work in.
So maybe it was just the way it was written down. Maybe it was to something in Canada. It didn't say it went overseas for sure. It just said to the king essentially.
Yeah, it's a marriage. Apparently, the majority of the cost of the Canadian Crown comes from maintaining historic buildings and honoring Canadians who have served the country. The powers of the monarchy in Canada are limited to the Constitution.
What video did you? You want to relink the video, Blonde in there?
This is CTV article that I'm reading. It says, while Canada may not pay directly to the monarchy, the country's ties to the House of Windsor could cost taxpayers more than $58.7 million annually. So I wonder where that $3 billion.
Here, I got something Blonde-in-Law sent in the thing earlier I missed. We're just going to play it on screen. Just one sec.
Okay.
Supported the carbon tax and defended Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's stance on the carbon tax. Why now? Why are you coming up with this now?
Well, I think there's two things, Lindsay. One is that, and that's right, and it's worked. It has had some impact in terms of reducing our emissions, making things more efficient. But as I said in my remarks, and I think certainly colleagues would know and people would know, it has become very divisive for Canadians. It's the perceptions of the impact, the negative impacts of the carbon tax on households without fully recognizing the positive impacts of the rebate has made this more of a divisive issue. It's been fed by misinformation and lies, quite frankly.
Okay, so what was that in response to? I think I missed that from earlier. I wasn't sure what that was in response to.
I think we saw this interview, didn't we?
Yeah, I think we watched it. I think we watched it on stream, the whole press conference. Yeah.
A verbo is for
whoops. No. Don't come through there. Oh God. Oh, frick. Stupid. I got multiple things opened up. It's all complicated to explain the situation here, but Canada. Oh, it's a whole film. Oh, okay, 48 minutes. Okay, we're not gonna play that. But for anyone want to check that out, check it out in the Discord. I'll like it and subscribe, and I'll watch it later for sure. I don't think I'm not gonna play that on Discord on stream here, but we'll definitely look into it off stream. Because I'd be curious to find more about that. Hey Zara, how's it going? Canadians don't like us. I'll hide behind the closed doors. You'll vote for me right now. You'll vote for me now, right? Oh yeah, it's Trudeau. You too, 2 cents. Yeah, well, this whole thing is just wild. It's just, I don't know. I wish it was. It's like it's things are finally getting a little heated up again since winter holidays, but now it's like to the point where it's like, hey, this is like too much. Like, it's getting so crazy right now. But yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to go over, Saul, or anything else you want to talk about or cover?
Not particularly. We're too dumb to get it, guys. Lol. Pierre's lies worked. Wonder what that's.
It's in statement to Mark Carney.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's just imitating the Liberals there. I'm assuming. I guess.
That's
his liberal impression. I'm assuming. But anyways, I wish I had more time today. But
just dumb.
I was gonna try and stream longer, but I've been ignoring way too many loud sounds. It's like in Step Brothers where the dad's like, "What are you guys doing?" He's like, "Oh, never mind." Like that's been going on this whole stream. So I need to go figure out what's going on, and be a dad. So I will.
That's why I was pulling my headphones out too. I got my kids home.
Yeah, it's a little harder on a Saturday.
They've been pretty good, but yeah.
Yeah, well, as soon as I started, the neighbor kid came over, and I felt bad saying no. I'm fine, go be quiet. I'm like, oh, they're not being quiet. Shocker. So it is what it is. But yeah, we'll be back Monday. I'll be streaming Monday. We'll be back Monday morning. Try and go for a little bit earlier. Try and be more consistent with the morning streams, as it's a bit better, I find, just to get more covered and everything. And then I don't have kids around, so it's easier that way too. But anyways,
have a good one, guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
See ya. Stay safe.
Stay
have
grounded.
Yeah, grounded.
See you guys later.
See ya.
See ya.